The champagne flute shattered against the marble floor of the penthouse, sending crystal shards skittering across $10,000 worth of Italian tile. But Isabella Hartwell didn't even flinch. She was too busy staring at her phone, at the bank statement that had just destroyed her entire world in exactly 8 seconds. "Dad," she whispered, her voice cracking like the crystal at her feet. "Dad, please tell me this is a mistake." Marcus Hartwell looked up from his hospital bed, his face pale and drawn, the machines around him beeping a steady rhythm of impending mortality. He'd survived the heart attack 3 days ago, but barely. And now, with his daughter standing in his penthouse recovery room, he had to deliver news that might finish what his failing heart had started. "It's not a mistake, Bella. $3 million. Isabella's hands were shaking. $3 million has disappeared from Hartwell Hospitality in the last 6 months. From one location. From Sunset Harbor. Sunset Harbor, the family restaurant. The first one her grandfather had opened in 1962, when he'd arrived in America with nothing but a recipe book and a dream. The restaurant that had launched an empire of 43 locations across the country. The restaurant that was supposed to be untouchable, sacred, the crown jewel of the Hartwell legacy. "I know." Her father's voice was weak, but there was something else in it. Something that made Isabella's blood run cold. Resignation. "You know." She whirled on him, her $500 heels crunching on crystal. "Dad, someone is stealing from us. From you. From Grandpa's legacy. And you just, you know." Marcus closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were filled with tears. "I've tried to investigate. Quietly. I've sent auditors, accountants, consultants. Every single one of them comes back and tells me the numbers look fine. The books balance. The receipts match. But Bella, I can feel in my bones. Something is wrong. Someone I trusted, someone I trust with everything, is robbing us blind, and they're so good at it that I can't prove it. I can't even figure out who." Isabella's mind was racing. Her father was Marcus Hartwell, the restaurant mogul, the man who'd built a $60 million empire from his father's single location. He was sharp, ruthless in business, and he hadn't gotten where he was by being stupid or careless. If he couldn't figure this out, "The doctors say I have maybe 6 months, Marcus continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "The damage to my heart, it's extensive. And Bella, I can't die knowing someone destroyed what your grandfather built. I can't." That's when Isabella knew what she had to do. "Then I'll figure it out." She straightened her shoulders, her jaw setting with determination. "I'll go to Sunset Harbor myself. They know your face, sweetheart. You've been in magazines, social media, that documentary about young billionaire heirs. Then I won't go as Isabella Hartwell." A smile curved her lips, but it wasn't warm. It was predatory. "I'll go as someone else. Someone nobody would suspect. Someone who can get close enough to see the truth." Marcus tried to sit up, alarm crossing his features. "Bella, no. It could be dangerous. If someone is capable of stealing $3 million, they're capable of—" "I'm doing this, Dad." Isabella's voice was steel. "I'm going undercover in our own restaurant. I'm going to find whoever is stealing from us. And when I do—" She picked up a shard of crystal from the floor, watching it catch the light. "They're going to wish they'd never heard the name Hartwell." 3 days later, Isabella stood in front of a mirror in a dingy motel room 6 blocks from Sunset Harbor Restaurant, barely recognizing herself. Gone was the highlighted blonde hair, replaced with a mousy brown from a box dye that cost $8.99. Gone were the designer clothes, the perfect manicure, the subtle makeup applied by professionals. In their place, a cheap pair of jeans from Target, a plain white t-shirt with a coffee stain she'd added herself, and sneakers that had seen better days, purchased from a thrift store that smelled like mothballs and broken dreams. She'd even gotten fake glasses, thick-rimmed, slightly crooked, the kind that screamed, "I need this job." "My name is Emma Parker," she said to her reflection, practicing the voice she'd been working on. Softer than her normal tone, more hesitant, less commanding. "I just moved here from Ohio. I'm looking for work. Any work." Her phone buzzed. A text from her father's lawyer, Richard. "The apartment is ready. Utilities are on. Remember, no credit cards, no luxury purchases. You're living on cash only. The checking account we set up for Emma Parker has $2,000 in it. Make it last. Isabella. No. Emma now looked around the motel room. This was the cheapest place she could find. $49 a night, cash only, no questions asked. The bedspread had suspicious stains. The shower curtain was growing something that might achieve sentience soon, and she was pretty sure she'd seen a mouse scurry under the mini fridge. She'd never been more terrified in her life, and she'd never been more determined. The next morning, Emma Parker walked through the doors of Sunset Harbor Restaurant at exactly 9:47 a.m., her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst through her ribs. The restaurant was beautiful. She'd forgotten how beautiful. She'd been here as a child, of course, dozens of times, but always through the lens of being a Hartwell. Now, seeing it as Emma, as a desperate job seeker, she noticed different things. The way the morning light streamed through the massive windows overlooking the harbor, painting everything gold. The original brick walls her grandfather had exposed in 1975, each brick holding a story. The smell of fresh bread baking, the signature Hartwell sourdough that had made them famous. The black and white photographs of the family covering one wall, including one of her, taken at her college graduation, smiling next to her father. She quickly looked away from it. A woman in her 50s approached, her expression harried. She wore a manager's badge that read, Patricia Torres, General Manager. Can I help you? Patricia's voice was clipped, professional but exhausted. Hi, yes, I'm looking for work. Emma made her voice shake slightly. I just moved here, and I have restaurant experience, and I saw your listing online for a server position. There was no listing. Emma knew this, but she was gambling that Patricia wouldn't admit it, that the woman would be too busy, too stressed to check. Patricia's eyes traveled over Emma, assessing. Experience? 3 years at a diner in Ohio. I've done everything. Server, host, even some line cooking when we were short-staffed. All eyes, but Emma had studied. She'd spent the last 3 days watching YouTube videos, reading restaurant blogs, memorizing terminology. She'd even called an old college friend who'd worked her way through school waitressing and grilled her for hours. References? The diner closed. Emma dropped her eyes. Owner retired. But I can bring you his personal number if you want to call him. She wouldn't, of course. The owner was actually Richard the lawyer, who'd agreed to play along if anyone called. Patricia sighed, and Emma saw her opportunity. The woman was tired. Desperate, even. Look, Emma said softly. I know I just walked in off the street, but I'm a hard worker. I'm reliable, and I really, really need this job. Let me work one shift, just one, unpaid as a trial. If I'm not good enough, I'll walk away. No hard feelings. It was the perfect pitch. No risk to Patricia, all the benefit. And Emma could see the moment the woman's resistance crumbled. Fine. One shift. Tomorrow, lunch service. Be here at 10:30 a.m. sharp. We're all black. Black pants, black shirt, non-slip shoes. Don't be late. Thank you. Emma breathed. Thank you so much. I won't let you down. As she turned to leave, she caught sight of a man watching her from the bar. Mid-30s, attractive in a sharp-featured way, with dark eyes that seemed to catalog every detail of her appearance. He wore an expensive watch. She recognized it as a Rolex Submariner, at least $15,000, and his clothes were tailored in a way that screamed money. Too much money for a bartender or server. He smiled at her, and something about it made her skin crawl. New girl, he called out to Patricia. Trial shift tomorrow. Dominic, Patricia replied, already walking away. Try not to scare this one off. Dominic. Emma filed the name away, along with the expensive watch and the predatory smile. She had a feeling Dominic was going to be very important to her investigation. Emma's first shift was a disaster. She dropped a tray of drinks in the first hour, spilled marinara sauce down the front of her shirt in the second, got the orders confused for table 7 and table 11, resulting in a very angry businessman screaming about his seafood allergy to the salmon she'd accidentally served him instead of the chicken he'd ordered. By hour 3, she was sweating through her cheap shirt, her feet were screaming in agony, and she wanted nothing more than to quit, go home to her penthouse, and sink into her soaking tub with a glass of wine. But then she remembered her father's face, the resignation in his eyes. $3 million. So she pushed through. The other servers were a mixed bag. There was Maria, a woman in her late 20s who'd been at Sunset Harbor for 6 years and seemed to run the floor with quiet efficiency. She'd helped Emma twice already, gently correcting her mistakes before Patricia noticed. Then there was Tyler, a college kid who was clearly only doing this for beer money and spent most of his time on his phone in the break room. And Jessica, who looked at Emma like she was something unpleasant she'd stepped in. "You're not going to last," Jessica said during their 30-second break in the back hallway. She was touching up her makeup, even though they weren't supposed to during shifts. "Patricia only hired you because Dominic's been on her case about being understaffed. But you're sloppy. You're slow. And you clearly have no idea what you're doing." Emma bit back the retort that wanted to come out, something cutting about Jessica's own performance, which Emma had been observing and wasn't exactly stellar. Instead, she just nodded. "I'm trying my best." "Your best sucks." Jessica snapped her compact closed. "Some of us actually need this job. We can't afford to have dead weight making us all look bad." She stalked off, leaving Emma alone in the hallway, fighting back tears that were both genuine and strategic. She needed to seem vulnerable, desperate, harmless. Don't listen to her. Emma turned to find Maria standing there, holding out a granola bar. "You need to eat. I can tell you're fading. First shifts are always brutal, especially lunch service." "Here." Maria pressed the granola bar into Emma's hand. "And for what it's worth, you're doing okay. You drop one tray." Jessica dropped 3 her first day and made a customer cry. "You'll get the hang of it." "Thank you," Emma said softly, meaning it. "Where are you from?" Patricia mentioned Ohio. "Small town. Nothing exciting." Emma unwrapped the granola bar, suddenly starving. "What about you?" "Born and raised here. Sunset Harbor's been my second home since I was 21. Maria's eyes went distant. "I love this place." "Your grandfather." She stopped, seeming to catch herself. "My grandfather?" Emma's heart skipped a beat. "The original owner. Marcus Hartwell's father. I met him once before he passed. He used to come in every Sunday, sit in the corner booth, and just watch, making sure everything was perfect, making sure people were happy." Maria smiled sadly. This restaurant was his whole heart. Everything he built. It meant something, you know? It wasn't just about money. It was about family, community, feeding people good food, and making them feel welcomed. Emma's throat tightened. She remembered her grandfather. The way he'd lift her onto his shoulders, the smell of garlic and basil that always clung to his clothes, the way his eyes crinkled when he laughed. "Sounds like he was a good man," she managed. "The best." Maria glanced at her watch. "Break's over. Come on, I'll help you with your next section." As they walked back to the dining room, Emma felt something shift inside her. This wasn't just about the money anymore. It wasn't even just about her father. This was about her grandfather's legacy, and she was going to protect it no matter what. The rest of the shift passed in a blur of orders, complaints, kitchen chaos, and trying to figure out the ancient POS system that seemed designed to maximize frustration. By the time 4 p.m. rolled around and Patricia told her she could clock out, Emma's feet felt like they'd been beaten with hammers. But she'd survived. "You can come back," Patricia said, her tone grudging. "Same time tomorrow. And actually be on the payroll this time. Minimum wage plus tips, paid weekly." "Thank you." Emma tried not to think about the fact that she spent more on coffee in a week than she was about to make in a month. "I really appreciate this chance." As she gathered her things from her locker in the tiny break room, she noticed something odd. The break room had 2 doors, one leading to the main hallway, one to what looked like a storage area. But the storage door had a keypad lock on it. That was strange. Why would a storage room need a keypad lock? She filed it away in her mental notebook, along with the expensive watch Dominic wore and the way Jessica had been typing furiously on her phone every time she went to the bathroom. Emma was about to leave through the back exit when she heard voices coming from Patricia's office. The door was slightly ajar, and she recognized Patricia's stressed tone and another voice. Male, smooth, confident. "Dominic, told you we need to be more careful," Patricia was saying. "Relax. Nobody's looking." The auditors came and went. Everything checked out. But what if? What if nothing? We've been doing this for 2 years, Patricia. 2 years. And nobody has figured it out. Not the accountants, not the corporate consultants, not even Marcus Hartwell himself. Dominic's laugh was cold. That old man is too busy dying to notice his empire is crumbling. Emma's hand clenched around her bag strap, so hard her knuckles went white. Keep your voice down, Patricia hissed. And we need to talk about the new girl. Emma. What about her? I don't know. Something feels off. The way she watches everything. The questions she asks. She's just a desperate waitress who needs a job. You're paranoid. Maybe. Or maybe I'm careful. That's why we've lasted this long. Fine. I'll keep an eye on her. Happy. There was the sound of movement, and Emma quickly ducked into the break room, pressing herself against the wall. She heard the office door open fully, footsteps in the hallway. Emma. She jumped, spinning around to find Maria, standing there with a concerned expression. You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. I'm fine. Just tired. Emma forced a smile. First day, you know. Come on. I'll walk you out. This neighborhood isn't great after dark. As they walked to the parking lot together, Maria chatting about the best places to eat nearby on a budget, Emma's mind was racing. Patricia and Dominic. They were working together. They were stealing from her family's restaurant, and they'd been doing it for 2 years. But how? And more importantly, how was she going to prove it? That night, in her tiny studio apartment, which was still nicer than the motel, but felt like a shoebox compared to her penthouse, Emma spread everything she knew across the cheap IKEA coffee table she'd bought with cash. She'd created a burner laptop, using Richard's help to set up an untraceable system. On it, she pulled up every piece of information she could access about Sunset Harbor's finances without tripping any alarms. The numbers were fascinating and infuriating. On paper, everything looked perfect. Revenue matched industry standards. Food costs were reasonable. Labor expenses made sense. Profit margins were healthy. But Emma knew from her father's private records that somehow $3 million had vanished, which meant someone was very, very good at cooking the books. She pulled up the employee records next. Patricia Torres had been with Hartwell Hospitality for 12 years, starting as a server and working her way up to general manager 5 years ago. Her salary was $78,000 a year, good money, but not enough to explain the Mercedes she drove or the designer handbags Emma had noticed in her office. Dominic Castellano had been hired 3 years ago as the assistant manager. Before that, he'd worked at several high-end restaurants in New York. His salary was $65,000. His Rolex cost more than 6 months of his salary. Emma dug deeper into Dominic's background. It took some creative searching and a call to a private investigator she trusted, but by 2 a.m., she had a file that made her blood run cold. Dominic Castellano had been accused of embezzlement at 2 previous restaurants. Both cases had been settled quietly, out of court, with non-disclosure agreements all around. He'd never been convicted, never even been charged. But the pattern was there, and somehow, he'd ended up working at her family's most valuable location. Emma pulled up the hiring records. The general manager at the time had been someone named Robert Morrison. She vaguely remembered her father mentioning Robert's retirement 4 years ago. Patricia had taken over after him. But who had hired Dominic? She scrolled through the documentation, looking for authorization signatures. There, Patricia Torres had signed off on Dominic's hiring. They'd known each other from a previous restaurant in New York. It was mentioned in the reference check notes. They'd known each other before. They'd worked together before. And now they were stealing together. Emma leaned back, her mind spinning. This was bigger than she'd thought. It wasn't just one employee skimming from the register. This was a coordinated, sophisticated operation that had been planned and executed over years. But she still didn't know how. Her phone buzzed. A text from her father. How was your first day? Emma smiled, typing back. Harder than closing a multi-million-dollar deal. But I survived. And Dad, I found them. Patricia and Dominic. I don't have proof yet, but I heard them talking. They're the ones. The response came quickly. Be careful. Please, Bella. Don't take any unnecessary risks. I won't. I promise. Love you. She set the phone down and looked at the documents spread around her. Tomorrow, she'd go back. She'd watch. She'd learn their patterns, their systems, their weaknesses. and then she'd take them down. Over the next 2 weeks, Emma settled into life at Sunset Harbor. She got better at serving. Maria had been right. She did get the hang of it. Her feet still hurt at the end of every shift, but she learned to anticipate table needs, to smile through difficult customers, to move efficiently through the dining room chaos. More importantly, she learned to watch. She noticed that Dominic always took the lunch deposit to the bank himself, every single day at 3 p.m. Patricia never accompanied him. Nobody verified the amount except him. She noticed that certain high-ticket tables, the ones that ordered expensive wine, premium steaks, the full tasting menu, were always seated in Dominic's section when he occasionally filled in as a server. And those tables always paid in cash. She noticed that the storage room with the keypad lock was only accessed by Patricia and Dominic. When she asked Maria about it, the other woman had just shrugged. No idea. I worked here 6 years, and I've never been in there. Patricia says it's for expensive inventory, the premium wines, imported ingredients, stuff like that. Only management has access. Emma had tried to peek at the code once when Patricia was unlocking it, but the woman had been too careful, her body blocking the keypad. She needed to get into that room. She also noticed the relationships between staff members. Maria was loved by everyone. She was the mother hen of the restaurant, always looking out for others, always picking up slack. Tyler was tolerated because he was reliable enough and didn't cause drama, even if he was lazy. Jessica was resented. Emma had overheard 3 separate conversations in which other servers complained about her attitude and the way she was always kissing up to Patricia. But most interesting was the way everyone treated Dominic. There was fear there, respect, maybe, or at least the appearance of it. But underneath fear, he fires people, Maria had confided during a break. For no reason sometimes, or for tiny mistakes. Last month, he fired Brandon for being 3 minutes late to a shift. Brandon had worked here for 4 years. That seems extreme. That's Dominic. Patricia backs him up every time, too. So we all just keep our heads down and do our jobs. Emma filed this away. Fear was a tool, and Dominic wielded it expertly, which meant the other employees wouldn't speak up even if they noticed something wrong. On her 15th day at Sunset Harbor, Emma's investigation took a major step forward. She'd drawn the closing shift, last server out, responsible for helping with closing duties. It was 11 p.m., and the restaurant was finally empty except for her, Maria, Patricia, and Dominic. Emma, can you help me with inventory in the main storage room? Maria asked, yawning. We need to count the beer for tomorrow's delivery. Sure. They spent 20 minutes counting bottles and kegs, updating the spreadsheet on Maria's clipboard. As they worked, Emma kept one ear on the conversation happening in Patricia's office. The door was open, and voices carried. Meeting with the distributor tomorrow, Patricia was saying, Same as always? Same as always. I'll handle it. Dominic's smooth voice. Did you process the week's receipts? Already done. Everything's balanced and ready for corporate review. Good. I don't want another surprise audit. That last one was too close. Emma pretended to focus on counting bottles, but her mind was racing. What had been close about the audit? According to her father, the auditors had found nothing wrong, which meant Patricia and Dominic had fooled them. But how? Emma, you okay? Maria was watching her with concern. Yes, sorry. Lost count. Starting over. They finished the inventory, and Maria headed out, leaving Emma as the last server. She was supposed to do a final sweep of the dining room, make sure all tables were cleared and reset for tomorrow. But as she worked, she noticed something. Patricia and Dominic had gone into Patricia's office and closed the door. She could hear their voices, muffled now, but still audible. And more importantly, the storage room with the keypad was down the hallway, unguarded for the first time since Emma had started. This was her chance. Heart pounding, Emma quickly finished her sweep and then walked as casually as possible toward the back hallway. She pulled out her phone, pretending to check a message, but actually opening the camera app. If she couldn't get the code, maybe she could at least see what was in the room, or find another way to access it. She was 3 feet from the door when it opened. Dominic stood there, a box in his arms, his eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that made her freeze. Emma. His voice was pleasant, but there was something sharp underneath it. Working late, just finishing my closing duties. Maria and I did inventory. Very thorough. He stepped out of the storage room, and Emma caught a glimpse inside before the door swung shut. Shelves, boxes, and what looked like a filing cabinet in the back corner. Why would a storage room for wine and ingredients have a filing cabinet? I'm impressed with your work ethic, Dominic continued, moving closer. Too close. Emma fought the urge to step back. You've been here 2 weeks, and you're already outperforming servers who've been here for months. Thank you. I just want to do a good job. I believe you. His smile was all teeth. But I'm curious about something. You said you're from Ohio. That's right. What part? Emma's mind raced. She prepared for this. Columbus area. Little suburb called Westerville. I have a friend from Columbus. Maybe you know him? Michael Brennan. It was a test. Emma could see it in his eyes. There was no Michael Brennan. Or if there was, Dominic had just made up the name to see if she'd lie. I don't think so. Columbus is pretty big, and I mostly kept to myself. Dominic studied her for another long moment, then smiled again. Well, have a good night, Emma. See you tomorrow. He walked past her, carrying his box toward the back exit. Emma stood in the hallway, her heart hammering, realizing she'd just had her first real confrontation with the enemy. And he was suspicious. The next morning, Emma arrived at Sunset Harbor to find a restaurant in chaos. 2 servers had called in sick. Maria was running late because of a family emergency, and Patricia looked like she was about to have a breakdown. Emma, thank God. Patricia grabbed her as soon as she walked in. I need you on tables 1 through 12. Tyler will take 13 through 20. Jessica's not here yet. I'm here. Jessica burst through the door, 15 minutes late, makeup perfect and not a hair out of place. Patricia didn't even acknowledge her. Emma, you're up. We've got a full book for lunch, and we're already behind on prep. Go. The next 4 hours were a blur. Emma moved through the dining room like a machine, taking orders, delivering food, refilling drinks, processing payments. Her old life felt like a distant dream. She couldn't remember the last time she'd worked this hard physically, this intensely focused on dozens of tasks simultaneously. But she was learning. She was learning how the restaurant really worked from the inside out. And she was noticing things, like the way Dominic was always the one who handled certain customers, the ones who looked like money, who ordered the expensive items, who paid in cash. She watched him take a payment from a businessman at table 6, $300 in cash for a meal that the receipt showed as $212. Dominic had pocketed the difference. It was subtle, quick. If she hadn't been watching specifically, she would have missed it. He'd entered the correct amount into the POS system, processed the credit card the man had provided for exactly that amount, then pocketed the cash the man had also given him. Probably as a tip, the customer had likely thought. But tips were supposed to be pooled and distributed. That was Sunset Harbor policy. Emma kept watching. Over the course of the lunch shift, she saw Dominic do the same thing 3 more times. Always with cash. Always with the expensive tables. Always pocketing the difference. By the end of the shift, she estimated he'd stolen at least $700 in one lunch service. If he did this every shift, her mind did the math. If Dominic was stealing even $500 per shift, 5 days a week, that was over $100,000 per year. Add in whatever scheme Patricia was running, multiply it over 2 years. The $3 million suddenly made sense. During her break, Emma locked herself in the bathroom and called Richard, her father's lawyer. I need you to do something for me, she said quietly. I need access to the credit card processing records for Sunset Harbor. Every transaction, every receipt for the last 2 years. That's going to be complicated. The fraud team will want to know why. Tell them we're doing a routine security audit. Tell them whatever you need to tell them. But I need those records, Richard. I think I know how they're doing it. What did you find? Dominic is double charging customers, or he's taking cash payments, processing credit cards for less, and keeping the difference. But I need to see the full scope of it to prove it's systematic. Richard was quiet for a moment. If you're right, Bella, this is serious. This could be criminal charges. Prison time. Good. Emma's voice was ice. Give me those records. She hung up and stared at herself in the bathroom mirror. Her reflection looked tired. Her hair needed washing. Her Emma Parker disguise was starting to feel less like a costume and more like a skin she couldn't quite shed. But underneath it all, she was still Isabella Hartwell. And she was close. So close to exposing the truth. That evening, Emma was walking to her car, a beat-up Honda Civic she'd bought for $3,000 cash, when Jessica cornered her in the parking lot. "We need to talk." Emma turned, surprised. Jessica had barely spoken to her since that first day, except to make snide comments about Emma's performance. "Okay." Jessica looked around, as if checking for eavesdroppers, then stepped closer. "Look, I know we didn't get off on the right foot, but I need to warn you about something." "Warn me?" "Dominic is asking questions about you. Where you're from. Why you're really here. He thinks you're, I don't know, suspicious or something." Emma's blood ran cold. "What kind of questions?" "He had me try to friend you on Facebook. Except you don't exist on Facebook. Or Instagram. Or anywhere online." "That's weird, Emma. People our age? We're all online. So where are you?" Emma had prepared for this too. "I deleted everything after a bad breakup. Ex-boyfriend was stalking me online. It felt safer to just disappear. It was plausible, believable." But Jessica's eyes were still narrowed with suspicion. "Dominic also asked me to watch what you do. See if you're stealing or causing problems or—" Jessica trailed off. "Look, I don't know what your deal is. And honestly, I don't care. But whatever you're mixed up in, whatever reason you're really here, be careful. Dominic is dangerous." "Dangerous how?" Jessica laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You really are new, aren't you? Dominic doesn't just fire people who cross him. There was a server 2 years ago, Marcus. He started asking questions about the books, about some discrepancies he'd noticed. He got fired, but then his apartment got broken into. His car got keyed. He got jumped in a parking lot one night and ended up in the hospital. Did he go to the police? He tried, but there was no proof Dominic was involved. And Marcus left town after that. Moved to California, last I heard. Too scared to come back." Emma processed this. If Jessica was telling the truth, and the fear in her eyes suggested she was, then this was bigger than embezzlement. This was criminal conspiracy, possibly even organized crime. "Why are you telling me this?" Emma asked quietly. Jessica looked away. "Because despite what you might think, I'm not a terrible person. And you seem, I don't know, like you're trying to do the right thing. Like you actually care about this place." She met Emma's eyes again. "Just be careful. Please." Before Emma could respond, Jessica walked away, leaving her alone in the parking lot with more questions than answers. The credit card records arrived 3 days later. Richard had them delivered to Emma's apartment in an encrypted digital format, accessible only through her burner laptop. Emma spread the data across 3 monitors she'd set up on her tiny kitchen table and began the painstaking process of analysis. It took her 2 full days, but by the end of it, she had the proof she needed. Dominic's scheme was brilliant in its simplicity. When customers paid with cash, he would process a smaller amount through the POS system and pocket the difference. But the real genius was in how he covered his tracks. He was selectively adjusting the receipts in the system to match the actual credit card charges, making the books balance. But the original receipts, the ones the customers received, showed higher amounts. If anyone audited the restaurant's copy of the receipts, everything would look perfect. The credit card charges matched the processed amounts. The cash deposits matched the reported revenue. But if you compare the customer receipts to the restaurant receipts, there was a discrepancy. A $3 million discrepancy. Emma had also found something else in the records. A pattern of phantom employees. People listed on the payroll who didn't actually exist. Direct deposits going into accounts that Patricia controlled. Patricia was stealing through payroll. Dominic was stealing through customer transactions. Together, they'd built a system that was nearly impossible to detect through normal auditing processes. Nearly impossible, but not completely. Emma compiled everything into a comprehensive report. She had dates, transaction numbers, account information, patterns of behavior. She had enough to not only fire Patricia and Dominic, but to press criminal charges and potentially recover a significant portion of the stolen money. But as she looked at the report, she realized something. If she just turned this over to the police or to her father's legal team, Patricia and Dominic would know someone had been investigating. They might destroy evidence. They might flee. They might have time to cover their tracks even more thoroughly. No, Emma needed more. She needed to catch them in the act. She needed irrefutable, impossible to deny proof that would hold up in any court. She needed to get into that locked storage room. Emma spent the next week preparing for what she called, in her mind, Operation Endgame. First, she befriended Tyler. It wasn't hard. He was lonely, bored, and desperate for attention. She started taking her breaks with him, laughing at his jokes, asking about his classes at community college. Within 3 days, he was following her around like a puppy. "Tyler," she said casually on Thursday afternoon, "can I ask you something?" "Sure, what's up?" "That storage room with the keypad. The one only Patricia and Dominic can access. Do you know what's in there?" Tyler shrugged. "Expensive stuff, I guess. I've never really thought about it. It's just weird, right? I mean, I've worked in restaurants before, and I've never seen a storage room that was that locked down." "Yeah, I guess." Tyler glanced around, then lowered his voice. "I mean, I did see Patricia going in there once with like a bunch of files and folders, which was weird because why would you store paperwork in a food storage room?" Emma's pulse quickened. "Files and folders?" "Yeah, like a whole box of them. I just figured it was old invoices or something." "Why?" "No reason. Just curious." But Emma was more than curious. She was certain now. The locked storage room wasn't for wine or imported ingredients. It was where Patricia and Dominic kept their real records, the evidence of their theft. She needed to get in there. That night, Emma did something she'd never done before. She broke in her own family's restaurant. Well, broken was a strong term. She still had the master key that Richard had given her, the key that could access any Hartwell hospitality location in case of emergency. She'd just never used it because she'd been trying to maintain her cover. But it was 2 a.m., the restaurant was closed, and she was running out of time. Her father's health was declining. Every day she waited was a day Patricia and Dominic could steal more money, could destroy more evidence. The restaurant was eerie at night. The dining room that was so full of life during service was now just shadows and silence. Emma moved through it quickly, her phone flashlight leading the way, until she reached the back hallway. The storage room door loomed in front of her. She didn't have the code for the keypad, but she did have something else, a small device that Richard had obtained for her from a security consultant. It was technically illegal, but it could run through keypad combinations in minutes. Emma attached it to the keypad and activated it. The device began cycling through numbers, testing each combination. According to the consultant, this particular keypad model had a limited number of possible codes. It would take 15 minutes tops. Emma waited, her heart pounding so loud she was sure someone would hear it. 12 minutes later, the device beeped softly. The lock clicked. The door swung open. Emma stepped inside and froze. The room was exactly as she'd glimpsed it before. Shelves of inventory along the walls. But in the center, under a dusty tarp, was something that made her blood run cold. She pulled off the tarp and found herself staring at a complete secondary accounting system. A computer, a printer, filing cabinets full of documents. And on the wall, a whiteboard covered in calculations and notes. This was their operations center. This was where they planned everything. Emma pulled out her phone and started photographing everything. Every document, every note, every calculation. She worked methodically, making sure she captured every piece of evidence. In the filing cabinet, she found folders organized by month. Each one contained the real receipts, the ones that showed the actual amounts customers had paid before Dominic had adjusted them in the system. There were also payroll records showing the phantom employees, complete with fake social security numbers and direct deposit information. It was all here, every piece of proof she needed. She was photographing the last folder when she heard it. Footsteps. Someone was in the restaurant. Emma's blood turned to ice. She quickly but quietly closed the filing cabinet, replaced the tarp over the computer setup, and looked for a way out. But there was only one door, and the footsteps were getting closer. She was trapped. The footsteps stopped right outside the storage room door. Emma pressed herself against the wall behind a shelf, barely breathing, praying that whoever it was would just walk past. The door opened. The light flicked on, and Dominic Castellano stood in the doorway, his eyes scanning the room before landing directly on Emma's hiding spot. "Hello, Emma," he said softly. Or should I say, Isabella Hartwell. Emma stepped out from behind the shelf, her mind racing through options. Run? Fight? Talk her way out? But Dominic was blocking the only exit, and he was bigger, stronger, and clearly had been expecting her. "I don't know what you're talking about," she tried, but even she could hear how weak it sounded. Dominic laughed. "Please, don't insult my intelligence. I've known who you were since your second day here." "What? Did you really think you could fool me?" Isabella Hartwell, billionaire heiress, playing dress-up as a waitress. He stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. "You made one critical mistake. You're too good at this. Too smart. Too observant. No real, desperate waitress from Ohio would notice the things you notice. Would ask the questions you ask. Would watch people the way you watch them." Emma's hand moved slowly toward her pocket, where her phone was. "Looking for this?" Dominic held up a signal jammer. "I've been blocking cell reception in this area for the last 10 minutes. You can't call for help. You can't send your little photos to anyone. You're completely alone." Fear spiked through Emma, but she forced herself to stay calm. "If you've known who I am, why didn't you just fire me? Or report me to Patricia? Because I want to see what you'd figure out. How much you knew. How much proof you had." Dominic gestured at the storage room around them. "And now I know. You know everything. Which means we have a problem." "We certainly do. Because I've already sent copies of everything I found to my father's legal team. If anything happens to me—" "No, you haven't." Dominic's smile was cold. "If you'd already sent the evidence, you wouldn't be here breaking in at 2 a.m. You'd be sitting safe at home while the police raided this place. You're here because you needed more. And that desperation, that's what's going to get you killed." The casual way he said it made Emma's stomach drop. "You can't be serious." "Why not? You know what they say, in for a penny, in for a pound. I've already stolen $3 million. What's one more crime?" He reached into his jacket and pulled out a gun. Emma's blood turned to ice. "Here's what's going to happen," Dominic continued, his voice eerily calm. "You're going to give me your phone. You're going to delete every photo, every file, every piece of evidence you've collected. Then you're going to leave Sunset Harbor and never come back. You're going to tell your father that you investigated and found nothing. And you're going to let this go. Or what? You'll shoot me." Emma was surprised by how steady her voice was. "In the middle of a restaurant? Where there are security cameras? The cameras don't cover this hallway. Patricia made sure of that when we had them installed. And as for shooting you," Dominic shrugged. "I'm thinking more along the lines of a tragic accident. An attempted robbery gone wrong. A poor waitress in the wrong place at the wrong time." Emma's mind was racing. She needed to stall, needed to think. "Patricia knows you're here. Patricia is at home, sleeping peacefully, completely unaware that her perfect partner is about to solve our biggest problem." Dominic took a step closer. "Patricia's too soft, too scared. She wanted to just lay low, wait for you to get bored and leave. But I knew you wouldn't. You're too much like your father. Too stubborn. Too determined to protect your precious family legacy." "My grandfather built this restaurant from nothing," Emma said, anger bleeding through her fear. "He worked himself to the bone to give his family a better life, to give his community a place that meant something. And you're destroying it. For what? Money. Money, freedom, power. Take your pick." Dominic raised the gun, pointing it directly at her chest. "Now give me the phone, Isabella. Last chance." Emma reached into her pocket slowly. Her fingers closed around her phone, but she didn't pull it out. Instead, she did something she'd learned in the self-defense class her father had insisted she take after a stalking incident when she was 19. She threw herself to the side, behind the shelf, as she simultaneously hurled her phone at Dominic's face. The gun went off. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space. The bullet slammed into the wall behind where Emma had been standing. Emma didn't wait to see if he'd fire again. She grabbed the nearest thing she could find, a bottle of wine from the shelf, and threw it at Dominic as hard as she could. It hit him in the shoulder. He stumbled back, cursing, and Emma ran. She burst out of the storage room and sprinted down the hallway, hearing Dominic's footsteps pounding behind her. She had maybe a 10-second head start, and she needed to make it count. The dining room. If she could get to the dining room, to the windows, She could break one and scream for help. Someone might hear. Someone might call the police. She crashed through the kitchen door, nearly slipping on the tile floor, and scrambled toward the dining room entrance. But Dominic was faster. His hand closed around her arm, yanking her back with brutal force. She slammed into him, and they both went down, tumbling across the kitchen floor. Emma kicked out, her foot connecting with his ribs. He grunted in pain, but didn't let go. His hand found her throat. "You stupid little girl," he snarled, squeezing. "You should have just taken the money and left." Emma couldn't breathe. Black spots danced in her vision. She clawed at his hands, but he was too strong. This was it. She was going to die in her grandfather's restaurant, killed by the man who'd been stealing from her family. And then, suddenly, Dominic's grip loosened. He fell sideways, and Emma sucked in a desperate breath, coughing and gasping. Standing over them, holding a cast-iron pan, was Maria. "Get away from her," Maria said, her voice shaking but firm. She raised the pan again, ready to strike. Dominic scrambled backward, blood running down the side of his head where Maria had hit him. "You crazy. I called the police." Maria cut him off. "They're on their way. And I recorded everything on my phone. Everything you said about killing her. About stealing. All of it." Emma could see Maria's phone propped up on the counter, its camera facing them. The red recording light was on. Dominic saw it too. And in that moment, Emma watched his entire demeanor change. The confidence drained out of him like water from a broken glass. He looked from Maria to Emma, then to the phone, then back again. I didn't mean," he started. "Save it," Emma managed, her voice hoarse from where he'd choked her. "Save it for your lawyer." In the distance, sirens wailed. Getting closer, Dominic made one last desperate move toward the back exit, but his head injury from Maria's blow made him stumble. By the time he reached the door, police officers were pouring through the front entrance. It was over. The next few hours were a blur of police statements, ambulances, and crime scene investigators. Emma's throat was already bruising where Dominic had choked her, and the paramedics insisted she go to the hospital for evaluation. But first, she had to explain everything. "Let me get this straight," Detective Sarah Morrison said, looking between Emma and Maria in the restaurant's dining room. "You're Isabella Hartwell. You've been working undercover as a waitress to investigate embezzlement at your own family's restaurant." "Yes. And you," the detective turned to Maria, "you came here in the middle of the night because I couldn't sleep," Maria said. "I've been worried about Emma, Isabella, for days. The way Dominic was watching her, asking questions about her. It reminded me of what happened to Marcus, the server I told you about." She looked at Emma. "So I decided to follow him tonight. I saw him come to the restaurant, and I knew something was wrong. I let myself in with my key, and I heard everything. And recorded it," the detective confirmed, looking at Maria's phone. "And recorded it," Maria agreed. The detective turned back to Emma. "And you have evidence of the embezzlement?" "In that storage room. Filing cabinets full of documents. And I have photos on my phone." "Well, I had photos. Dominic made me drop it when—" She touched her throat gingerly. "We recovered your phone from the storage room," another officer said, holding up an evidence bag. "The photos are still on it." Emma nearly collapsed with relief. The detective made some notes. "We're arresting Mr. Castellano for attempted murder, assault, and unlawful imprisonment. We'll need to investigate the embezzlement charges separately, but based on what I've seen so far, I think we'll be adding fraud, theft, and conspiracy charges as well." "What about Patricia Torres?" Emma asked. "She's Dominic's partner in all of this. We've already sent officers to her home. She'll be brought in for questioning." Emma nodded, suddenly feeling exhausted. The adrenaline was wearing off, and her entire body ached. "Ms. Hartwell," the detective said more gently, "what you did was incredibly dangerous and technically illegal, breaking and entering, even if it is your family's property." "I know, but my father is dying, and I couldn't." Emma's voice broke. "I couldn't let them get away with it, with destroying everything my grandfather built." The detective studied her for a long moment. "For what it's worth, I understand. And given the circumstances, I don't think we'll be pressing charges for the breaking and entering. But next time, and God, I hope there isn't next time, call the police first." Let's do our jobs. Yes, ma'am. Emma finally made it to the hospital at 5 a.m. The doctor examined her throat, gave her pain medication, and told her she was lucky the bruising wasn't worse. She was sitting in the examination room, waiting for her discharge papers, when her phone rang. Her father, Bella. His voice was weak but urgent. I just got a call from Detective Morrison. Are you all right? I'm fine, Dad. A little bruised, but fine. You could have been killed. She could hear the tears in his voice. Bella, when she told me what happened. But I wasn't killed. And Dad, we got them. We got Dominic and Patricia. We have all the evidence we need. The police are processing everything now, but they think they can recover most of the stolen money. There was silence on the other end of the line. Then, you did it. We did it, Emma corrected. And Dad, Grandpa's restaurant is going to be okay. I'm going to make sure of it. The story hit the news 2 days later. Billionaire's daughter goes undercover to expose million-dollar theft ring. Emma's phone exploded with interview requests, but she turned them all down. This wasn't about publicity. This wasn't about her. This was about Sunset Harbor. Patricia Torres was arrested and charged with fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. She immediately took a plea deal, agreeing to testify against Dominic in exchange for a reduced sentence. Her testimony revealed the full scope of their operation, not just at Sunset Harbor, but at 2 other Hartwell hospitality locations where they'd pulled similar schemes. Dominic Castellano was charged with attempted murder, assault, embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy. His trial was scheduled for 6 months out, but with Maria's recording and all the physical evidence Emma had photographed, his lawyer was already suggesting he consider a plea deal. The police investigation also uncovered connections to organized crime. Dominic had been funneling some of the stolen money to a crime family in New York that had helped him set up the false identities for the phantom employees. Additional arrests followed. In the end, the stolen money totaled not $3 million, but $4.2 million across 3 locations. The recovery process would take time, but the authorities were optimistic they could retrieve most of it from the various accounts Patricia and Dominic had used. 3 weeks after that night in the storage room, Emma stood in front of the Sunset Harbor staff. She'd called an emergency meeting. Every employee was there, servers, cooks, dishwashers, hosts. Everyone except Patricia and Dominic. And everyone knew who Emma really was now. I owe all of you an apology, she began, her voice steady despite her nerves. I lied to you about who I was. I came here under false pretenses, and I understand if you're angry about that. She looked around the room. Maria gave her an encouraging smile. Tyler looked uncomfortable. Jessica just looked tired. But I also want you to know why I did it. My grandfather built this restaurant 63 years ago. He built it to be more than just a place to eat. He built it to be a community, a family, a home. And when I discovered that someone was stealing from that legacy, destroying it from the inside, I couldn't just sit back and let it happen. Emma pulled out a folder. I've reviewed every employee file, every hour worked, every tip earned, every shift covered. And I found something else Patricia and Dominic were doing. They were skimming from your tips. They were cutting your hours and claiming overtime for themselves. They were stealing from you too. Angry murmurs rippled through the crowd. So here's what's going to happen, Emma continued. First, every one of you is going to receive back pay for all the stolen tips and hours, with interest. Second, I'm implementing a new management structure. Maria Torres. Maria's head snapped up, her eyes wide. I'd like to offer you the position of general manager. You've been the heart of this restaurant for 6 years. Everyone here respects you, trusts you, and from what I've seen, you're the best person to lead Sunset Harbor into its next chapter. Maria's eyes filled with tears. Ah, yes. Yes, absolutely. Thank you. The staff applauded, and Emma felt some of the tension in the room ease. Third, she went on, I'm raising the base wage for all positions by $3 an hour, and I'm implementing a profit-sharing program. You all work hard. You deserve to benefit when the restaurant succeeds. More applause, louder this time. And finally, Emma said, I want to apologize specifically to each of you for the deception. If anyone wants to quit, I'll understand. I'll provide excellent references and 2 months of severance pay. No questions asked. She waited. The room was silent. Then Jessica stood up. Emma braced herself for anger, for accusations. But Jessica just said, "I'm staying. And I'm sorry too, for being so awful to you when you first started. You were just trying to do the right thing." "Thank you," Emma said quietly. One by one, the other employees spoke up. They were staying. All of them. Because Sunset Harbor wasn't just a restaurant. It was a family. And families stuck together. 2 months later, Emma stood in her father's hospital room, holding his hand. Marcus Hartwell was dying. The doctors had been right about the 6 months, but wrong about the timeline. His heart was giving out faster than anyone had expected. But he was smiling. "You saved it," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "You saved Sunset Harbor. You saved your grandfather's dream. We all saved it," Emma corrected. "Maria, the staff, even the customers who kept coming back despite everything. It wasn't just me. But you were the one who had the courage to go undercover. To risk everything." Marcus squeezed her hand weakly. "Your grandfather would be so proud of you, Bella. I'm so proud of you." Emma felt tears sliding down her cheeks. "I couldn't have done it without you, Dad. You taught me what really matters. Not the money, not the empire. The people, the purpose. I did teach you well, didn't I?" Marcus managed a laugh that turned into a cough. When he recovered, his expression grew serious. "Bella, I need you to promise me something. Anything. Promise me you'll keep Sunset Harbor exactly as it is. Don't turn it into just another corporate location. Keep its soul. Keep its heart. Keep it special." "I promise," Emma whispered. "And promise me you'll take care of Maria and the staff. They're good people. They deserve to be treated well. I promise." Marcus closed his eyes, exhausted from the conversation. "Good. That's good. Now I can rest." Emma sat with him until he fell asleep, then quietly slipped out of the room. In the hallway, Maria was waiting. "How is he?" Maria asked. "Fading, but at peace." Emma wiped her eyes. "He knows Sunset Harbor is safe. That's all he wanted." Maria pulled Emma into a hug. "He's lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have all of you," Emma said. "Maria, I want to tell you something. After my father passes, I'm going to be running Hartwell Hospitality. All 43 locations. But Sunset Harbor is going to be different. I want you to have ownership stake in it. 20%. Maria pulled back, shocked. "What?" "Emma, I can't." "Yes, you can. You've dedicated 6 years of your life to that restaurant. You saved my life. And more than that, you embody everything my grandfather believed in. Community, loyalty, heart. I can't think of anyone I'd rather have as a partner." Maria's eyes filled with tears again. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Emma smiled. "Say you'll help me keep my grandfather's dream alive." "Yes." Maria managed through her tears. "Yes, of course. Always." Marcus Hartwell passed away 3 weeks later, peacefully in his sleep, with Isabella by his side. The funeral was attended by hundreds, family, friends, business associates, and dozens of Hartwell Hospitality employees past and present. The service was held at Sunset Harbor, which closed for the day to honor the man who had built an empire from one small restaurant. Emma gave the eulogy, speaking of her father's integrity, his vision, his love for his family, and his work. But most of all, she spoke about the lessons he'd taught her. "My father believed that success wasn't measured in dollars or locations or market share," she said, looking out at the crowded restaurant. "Success was measured in the people whose lives you touched, the communities you strengthened, the legacies you protected. He taught me that being a true leader means serving others, not ruling over them, and that the greatest wealth isn't what you accumulate, but what you give back." After the funeral, as guests mingled and shared memories, Emma found herself standing in front of the photograph of her grandfather, the one that had hung on the wall since 1975. "I did it, Grandpa," she whispered. "I protected what you built, and I'm going to keep protecting it. I promise." She felt a presence beside her and turned to find an elderly woman she didn't recognize. "You look just like him, you know," the woman said, gesturing to the photograph. "Your grandfather. Same determined eyes. Same stubborn chin. Did you know him?" "I was one of his first customers back in 1962. I was a young teacher, new to the area, didn't know anyone. Your grandfather saw me eating alone and sat down at my table. Talked to me for an hour about his dreams for this place. Made me feel like family. The woman smiled. I came back every week for 40 years until I moved away to be near my daughter. But I had to come today to pay my respects because this restaurant, this family meant something to me. Your grandfather gave me a home when I didn't have one. Emma felt her throat tighten. Thank you for telling me that. Thank you, the woman said, for saving this place. I read about what you did in the newspapers. Going undercover, risking your life. Your grandfather would have done the same thing. He was always willing to fight for what mattered. After the woman left, Emma stood there for a long time, looking at the photograph and thinking about legacy. Her grandfather had started with nothing and built something beautiful. Her father had expanded that beauty into an empire. And now it was her turn to carry it forward. But she would do it differently. She would never forget the lessons she'd learned working as Emma Parker. The exhaustion of a double shift. The gratitude for a kind word from a coworker. The fear of not being able to pay rent. The dignity of honest work. She would run Hartwell Hospitality with compassion, with integrity, with a servant's heart. And she would make sure every single employee in every single location knew they were valued. Emma stood in the newly renovated Sunset Harbor, marveling at the transformation. They'd kept everything that mattered. The brick walls, the harbor views, the original photographs, the sense of history and warmth. But they'd also modernized the kitchen, upgraded the equipment, improved the working conditions for the staff. And they'd added something new, a wall of photographs showing all the employees who had worked at Sunset Harbor over the years. Hundreds of faces, each one representing someone who had been part of the restaurant's story. What do you think? Maria asked, coming up beside her. It's perfect, Emma said. Grandpa would love it. The reservation book is full for the next 3 months, Maria reported. And we've gotten over 100 job applications just this week. Everyone wants to work here now. It was true. The story of Isabella going undercover had captured the public's imagination. Sunset Harbor had become famous not just as a great restaurant, but as a symbol of family loyalty, justice, and doing the right thing no matter the cost. Business was booming. But more importantly, the restaurant felt alive again. Felt loved. I have something for you, Emma said, handing Maria an envelope. Maria opened it and gasped. It was a check, a large one. That's your share of the recovered funds, Emma explained. 20% of what we got back from Patricia and Dominic's accounts, plus your profit sharing for the year. It's not everything they stole, but it's a start. Emma, this is too much. It's exactly right. You earned it. And Emma pulled out another paper. I've also finalized the paperwork to expand your ownership stake to 30%. You're not just a manager, Maria. You're a true partner now. Maria threw her arms around Emma, crying happy tears. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Emma said, for saving my life, for believing in this place, for being the heart of Sunset Harbor. That evening, Emma hosted a party at the restaurant. All the employees were there, past and present. Even some of the regular customers had been invited. Tyler was there, having just graduated from community college and accepted a management trainee position at another Hartwell Hospitality location. Jessica was there, softer now, kinder, working as Sunset Harbor's assistant manager under Maria. The kitchen staff, the dishwashers, the hosts, everyone who made Sunset Harbor run. Emma stood up to give a toast. A year ago, she said, I walked through those doors pretending to be someone I wasn't. I was scared, I was in over my head, and I had no idea if I could pull off what I was trying to do. But all of you, she gestured around the room, you taught me what really matters. Not wealth or status or power, but honesty, hard work, loyalty, compassion. She raised her glass. My grandfather opened this restaurant 64 years ago with a dream. My father expanded that dream into something bigger. And now, together, we're going to carry that dream into the future. Not as a corporation, but as a family. Not for profit alone, but for purpose. To Sunset Harbor, she said. To Sunset Harbor, everyone echoed, raising their glasses. As Emma looked around the room, at Maria laughing with the kitchen staff, at Jessica helping an elderly regular customer to her seat, at Tyler excitedly telling someone about his new position, at all the faces that had become so familiar and dear to her over the past year. She felt a profound sense of peace. She'd started this journey to catch thieves and recover stolen money. But she'd found something far more valuable: a purpose, a family, a home. And she'd learned the truth that her grandfather had known all along: that the real measure of wealth isn't what you have. It's what you give and what you're willing to fight for. Isabella Hartwell sat in her corner office at Hartwell Hospitality headquarters, reviewing the quarterly reports from all 43 locations. Every single one was thriving. She'd implemented the changes she'd made at Sunset Harbor across the entire company: higher wages, profit sharing, employee ownership opportunities, better working conditions. The industry experts had told her it would bankrupt the company. They'd been wrong. Employee retention was at an all-time high. Customer satisfaction scores had never been better. And despite, or perhaps because of, paying employees more and prioritizing their welfare, profits had actually increased by 32%. Turns out, when you treat people well, they work harder. They care more. They become invested in the company's success. Who knew? Emma smiled to herself. Her grandfather had known. He'd known all along. There was a knock on her door. Maria entered, looking professional in a sharp business suit. A far cry from the server uniform Emma had first seen her in. "Ready for the board meeting?" Maria asked. As a 30% owner of Sunset Harbor and a board member of Hartwell Hospitality, Maria had become Emma's closest advisor and confidant. "Ready," Emma confirmed, gathering her papers. They walked together to the conference room, where the other board members were waiting. As Emma presented her vision for the next quarter, expanding the employee ownership program, implementing even more progressive labor policies, investing in community programs, she thought about how far she'd come. 3 years ago, she'd been a spoiled heiress who'd never worked a real job in her life, who'd thought success was measured in bank account balances and magazine covers. Now she knew better. Success was the single mother who worked as a server at their Denver location and could finally afford to move out of her cramped apartment into a real house because of the profit-sharing program. Success was the immigrant dishwasher at their Seattle restaurant who could now send money home to his family and save for his own future because of the increased wages. Success was the young cook at Sunset Harbor who'd been promoted to sous chef and was thriving in a workplace that valued her skills and respected her contributions. Success was knowing that Hartwell Hospitality wasn't just a business. It was a force for good in the world. After the board meeting ended, Emma returned to her office and stood at the window, looking out over the city. On her desk was a framed photograph of her grandfather, her father, and her, taken at Sunset Harbor when she was 7 years old. All three of them were smiling, happy, surrounded by the restaurant they loved. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Is this Isabella Hartwell?" "Yes, who is this?" "My name is Rachel Kim. You don't know me, but I work at your Phoenix location. Something weird is happening here. Money isn't adding up. I think someone might be stealing. I don't know who else to tell." Emma stared at the message, her heart sinking and rising at the same time. Sinking because apparently they had another thief in the organization. Rising because this time, an employee had felt comfortable enough to come directly to her, to trust her to do the right thing. She typed back, "Thank you for telling me, Rachel. I'm taking this very seriously. Can you send me any details you have? And don't worry, we're going to figure this out together." As she waited for Rachel's response, Emma thought about the past 3 years, about everything she'd learned, about the person she'd become. She wasn't the same naive heiress who dyed her hair brown and pretended to be a desperate waitress. She was a leader now, a protector, someone who understood that being a CEO meant being a servant first. And if there was another thief in the organization, another person trying to destroy what her family had built, well, Emma smiled grimly. She'd gone undercover once to save Sunset Harbor. She could do it again, because that's what family did.